Friday.
How much we care.
I know. Yes. Thank you for your devotion. And also, we're in a room that has no windows. So
And the D for you today. Or make time for it later.
yeah, that's right. I'm looking forward to having some sunshine for a change. So, but this committee is really a ray of sunshine. I can bring that home. You guys have worked so hard at the last meeting and have been so thoughtful in your comments, and people who can't come give comments. So it's just really so appreciative. And the work has been excellent. So thank you. I have great thoughts for today, or great plans for today. So this time you all got an agenda, right? I don't know any changes to the agenda, unless anybody has any. Otherwise, we'll just go ahead and proceed with this.
And just one quick reminder, we are recording this meeting. Just so
Are aware.
It's an open meeting.
yes, public meeting, so it's being recorded.
You all have just pearls. Yes. So welcome, thank you. And I did realize in my sleep last night, for some reason, that we did say that that maybe we wouldn't always have in-person meetings, but we seem to be on such a good trajectory that unless at the end of this when we think differently, it seems like these have been working, and then those who can't make it do come in by phone. So we'll just kind of play that by ear, but I do know that that was one of the commitments that maybe we wouldn't have to meet in person as often. But right now it seems like we're really working on a lot of meat, and so it's good to be able to have that exchange. So thank you. Okay, and then I think now that we've talked about that, let's go into our work plan. And then people may decide otherwise.
Do you want to have people do introductions?
Oh, yes, I am so sorry. Yes, we need to have introductions, and we'll do introductions with you on the phone as well as those in the room, so that we know the voices, and then you'll know a little bit about who's speaking. So those of you on the phone, do you want to start your introductions? Betty, you want to start?
Yeah, sure. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes, thank you.
Excellent. Hey, everyone. So my name is Betty Steele, and I am an instructional support content developer for KinderCare Education. Good morning.
Morning. Morning. Next. Christina? Oh.
Good morning. Good morning. I'm Christina Montez. I work for Child Care Research and Referral for Umatilla and Morrow County as a quality improvement specialist.
Next.
This is Robin Hill Dunbar. I am a program officer for the Ford Family Foundation.
Thank you. Marina?
If you're talking, you're on mute, Marina.
Oh, yeah, it looks like she is unmuted.
Oh. There we are. Chelsea?
This is Chelsea. I'm from the Southern Oregon Early Learning Hub.
Welcome. Okay, and then in the room, Shauna, you want to start? We'll go to my right.
This is Shauna Rodriguez. I'm staffing this from the Early Learning Division. Susan Hammond from Oregon After School for Kids.
Renee Wood from the Oregon Alliance of YMCA.
Tommy Dell from the Research Institute.
Eva Manderson with the Northwest Early Learning Hub.
Tina Smith from Early Learning Multnomah in United Way.
Sam Green-O'Corey, Mount Hood Community College Head Start and Early Head Start.
Sabrina Ursuline, Owen.
Cheryl Myers, I'm the Quality Improvement Specialist in Lane County.
And Kristen Clotter, Teen Parent Program Coordinator for Centennial.
And Kiefer, also Child Care.
John Woods, and I'm staff for this committee. And it looks like we also have two members of the public, well, one member of the public on the phone, as well as Lisa Pinero, one of our policy. I forget your you're Lisa. I don't know your title, Lisa. I'm sorry.
Hi, Lisa Pinero.
With the Early Learning Division. And Robin Lopez Melton, are you on the phone?
Yes, hi, this is Robin Lopez-Melton from the Research Institute at Western Oregon University.
Oh, okay, welcome. So if we forget to ask you something from a phone, be sure and remind us. I'll try not to forget that.
I also just got a text, Meredith Russell, she's on her way to a conference at the beach, but she's listening in on the phone as well. And it's for a conference. I know, no, she's not here. No, I'm just kidding, Meredith. But I'll be doing my best for people on the phone to monitor the chat box, which Meredith does usually so well, and Kristen as well. So I know it's hard when you're on the phone, so we'll monitor that. So if you want to jump in and make a comment, we'll definitely be watching for that, as we sometimes forget our phone friends, and we just continue to get better at that.
I know, that's, we get caught up in the moment, it's hard to remember. But thank you for being there. Okay, so our next thing on our agenda is the work plan, and I think you all got a copy of that. And Don's going to go over this with you. Irene, you're going to go over it with you because I think this is the 4th revision that I'm aware of within the last week. So,
Was the one in the packet different than the one emailed out?
Maybe.
Oh.
I have to look at it. There's been 4. So I would rely on the one in the packet.
Yeah. I do believe you haven't changed it since we talked on Monday.
I don't think
No, so for everyone on the phone, the one that was sent out, the one that's available on the website for our guests, that is the most recent one that we will be discussing.
okay, good. Go ahead, Beth.
Okay.
Please.
So actually, Donalda and I had a opportunity. We met with the Early Learning Division exec team and the ELC Learning Council exec team to kind of work on all of the council's work plans. And so since this is an ad hoc charge from the council, we were looking through the Spark Ad Hoc and really trying to do work to make sure that everything lines up. I think we all know that work is complicated and dependent on different avenues. So really work to try to kind of sync all of that up. But I think it also speaks to a work plan is your work plan, and as you go, sometimes you have to make adjustments, and I think that's what will possibly continue to have happen. And so also, kind of as we were talking after our last meeting, kind of what we heard from committee members was this sense of needing to kind of see a bigger picture about all the parts and pieces that the standards, everything is so integral. So, and some other dependencies in terms of when the standards need to go to the council, when Spark rules go into effect, and some of those dependencies. We kind of re-looked at the work plan and thought about it from kind of the whole quality rating improvement system perspective. And so those are the changes that you'll see in the work plan. And so I'll kind of start in, because we're in May, and so we added in the Equity Implementation Committee, and we actually, Donalda will be providing an update on their feedback from the standards. And then we had, based on our discussion about deeper review of the professional qualification standards, so that's on our agenda. We had talked about doing a deeper discussion around adult-child interaction, but we moved that to June, needing a little more time to kind of gather some resources to share in that conversation. And then talking today about the continuous quality improvement plan, because so much of our conversation was around that a QRS is about that improvement, that continuous quality improvement. So again, stepping back and looking at the system as a whole. And then you can see we kind of go through the next month, looking at a second draft of the standard, conducting community engagement. That's actually what Meredith is out doing right now, doing some community engagement around the Spark standard.
And we might say that we hope to engage you and the committee in some of that, because you are in the community, and it seemed like we already have a ready group, or what do you say, a way into those groups. So, and that would be what we are hoping, that you would be able to participate.
So yeah, if you are interested in helping us pull together a group, you can kind of talk with staff, and we can help coordinate that with you to get that input. And then our intention was to do that through the summer, May through August. And then you can see in the work plan, we're also looking at doing briefings with, again, the Equity Implementation Committee, the Childhood Care and Education Committee, and Best Beginnings. So we tried to indicate in the work plan where that work would happen in terms of the feedback, that that's not work you do, but definitely work we will bring back to you. And then we would be looking through kind of the policy assessment for monitoring and rating, looking at the support, the targeted support, and then financial support. So kind of looking at that full support picture, and then coming back to a third draft of the standards and kind of having that bigger context to see those standards. And then we're anticipating a briefing of the Spark standards to the Early Learning Council in September. Hopefully a set of final recommendations to move forward to the committee in October, with the first reading at the ELC in November and final adoption in December, fingers crossed. And then, we kind of, I think this is where additional pieces will be fleshed out, is in kind of the other part of the charge of the committee that overseeing the implementation of Spark. And so thinking about maybe in November, we would kind of look at where we're at and kind of start identifying meeting frequency and setting a schedule for the coming year. So that, I don't want to kind of walk through every line, but that's kind of an overview of how we kind of restructured the work plan based on the conversations and based on some of the other dependencies. And I'm looking at our agenda. Do you think it makes sense for me just to talk about the Spark rules and that dependency now?
Right, well, it's right next.
It's right next?
Yeah.
Does that feel
yeah.
okay? So, is there any other comments about the work plan? Does that?
I also think that as we get more into some of these pieces, then the work plan is going to have significance to us. I don't know, but because as we're into the meat of the things, then you'll say, well, maybe, because there are a couple of these that I'm a little concerned that it might be too tight, but at least we're starting there. And then as you look, there are going to be some areas where we have a fair amount of overlap with some of the other groups that are working, and so we're going to want to bring that in. So it depends upon where they are and where we are as we put it together. We're trying to anticipate those things so that out in the community, you don't get one step for one thing and another step for something else. That's having been in the community and that happened. So just kind of back to Don's idea that this is really fluid, and if somebody feels a little tight, we know that, but we're going to see how that flows.
I know from other conversations that, there's a lot of rule revision going on in the child care world right now, and I'm sure you're mindful of that as you've built this work plan. Could you talk about that a little bit and how rolling out Spark standards in November, like the school age rule book I hear is supposed to be heard by the ELC in November, so can you talk about that a little bit?
I certainly can. I think that's a really good transition into the rules, because when I heard that we were going to do Spark rules, I thought, well, we haven't even started the committee work. Yeah. Sorry for that. And I was told, say, calm down. So that, that's a really good question, and I'll let Don answer that, because I, too, raised the same thing.
Well, and I think that actually speaks to kind of some of the fluidity of the work plan that might need to happen, because there are a lot of dependencies. So yes, we are in this very massive rule revision process, of which we're really looking at standard, getting common language across our rule books. That has never happened in Oregon, and actually many other states that has not happened, that you look across. And so during the rule revision, we're also thinking that up, because we know that foundational health and safety standards is part of meeting within the QRS. And so that is one of those dependencies that needs to happen, and working really closely between the rules team and what's, being developed, as well as the blue team in the development of the standards. And so making sure that there's, because, kind of the premise has always been, if it's in the rules, we don't need them in the standards. So making sure that that doesn't happens. And then additionally, the Spark rules. So part of the quality rating improvement system itself is in statute, but we haven't, because we were in a field test, we don't have rules for how that is supposed to work. And really the Spark rules are more about the process, where you guys are the content, advising on the content. The rules are kind of what gives the authority to do the process. So like, how do you award a rating? How do you revoke a rating? How do you, what are those processes? The application process, the monitoring, those processes, and it's very general, broad language, essentially saying the early learning division has the authority to do these things. There will be an application process. So it's very broad. And so, and that's the goal in writing them. And so Meredith Russell and Lisa Pinero are working really closely and kind of drafting those in terms of what do you need in the rules in terms of running a program versus the work of the content and designing the system of here. And so we're looking at those going in front of the Spark rules being in front of the Early Learning Council in October. And then that is, then if we look at our timeline, part of the rules will say that the Early Learning Council adopts the quality rating improvement standards. So we can't give them the standards to adopt until we have the rules for them to adopt. So that's some of those dependencies that we're really navigating into a nice pretzely knot at times, it feels like. But, that I think is the benefit of this work plan and why we noted them at the bottom to make sure that all that is syncing up. Anything you want to add?
Well, as you were talking, I was thinking, essentially what we're doing is we're going to populate the house. The rules have to build the house. And we have to know what it attaches to, and that we are really the content of all of that. So that made me feel better, because I thought if we're counterproductive, then that's we aren't going to get anywhere.
I think it's clear so that we don't get sidetracked, because it's easy just to get into that part.
Yeah.
And to just keep that focus. So thanks for explaining that, because I could easily go that way. Well, what about?
Well, and I think it's encouraging to say that it's loose. It's not loose. The process is it's more of a framing, and that we are going to really give that content to that.
You got to decorate.
You got to decorate.
You got to decorate the house.
Decorate. That's exactly right. And that means you can change it so that the rules won't be so such that you can't do those modifications like we're finding that we need to do.
Can you help me, what are the current rules, or are there, and then what are there are no current?
No, we have not had Spark rules. So it was put in statute in 2014, I believe. And then because we were in a field test, we hadn't written rules yet. So now that we're into this next revision, we need to have Spark rules. And Lisa Pinero's on the phone. Lisa, do you have anything you kind of want to add around this process that would kind of help answer the question?
I don't. You described it well. As you said, the council just needs the authority to establish the standards through rule. The council needs rules that state that they have the authority to adopt standards. And as you described, the rules will just talk about what that process will look like, including the application process. You named it all. There's not really much more to add. I'm happy to clarify or answer any questions. And then turn my other phone off.
So one of the rule ideas is to kind of roll this out statewide, so to speak, and encourage or mandate all childcare, or just offer and assist. Is that kind of trying to think of parameters that kind of understand where you're going?
I gotcha. No, I mean, in none of our conversation is mandating participation in Spark. Part of it's really about the process of how you essentially administer the program. And so it's who who adopts the standards, you know, how do we get final standards? And then what is the application process, the awarding of a rating process, and kind of that ongoing monitoring of it. And so those are the parameters of it. There's no intention of moving that forward. But I also think that one of the things that we talked about too is that when we are doing the Spark rules, that having some committee members listen into childhood care and education, which is where the Spark rules will go to provide input and to stay informed, and so we can make those linkages between the ad hoc committee work and the rule advisory committee, which is the childhood care and education committee.
And the reason is that committee is just a rules committee, period. It doesn't matter. It's the rules committee.
Oh, it's just.
Yes, sometimes people are,
So
let's not,
historically, it's always,
yeah, but it's all rules, it's not just child.
Yeah, so like they do, you know, Healthy Families Oregon will be on the docket for the June. I've been getting my meetings and what dates they are, so I better not even say a date. Messed up lately. But so at the next, we'll actually be giving them an overview of Spark rules, and doing some child care rules and Healthy Families Oregon, the home visiting rules. So they look at all the broad rules of the early learning division.
The reason I said that is because there was a question the other day, why them? It's just because that's the designated body.
Yeah. You have to have, every agency has to have a rule advisory committee. And so in our structure with getting a policy body of the Early Learning Council, they were designated to be the rule advisory.
And good, I mean, it kind of connects pieces.
Yeah.
So any questions about rules versus our process? Until the rules roll out.
Well, and I think one thing that Donalda, I really wanted to make sure that why we talked about this was wanted to make sure that nobody on this committee felt that there was another committee doing the work. Right. And that you guys, as she said before, a rubber stamp committee. And so that's why we really wanted to highlight those consistencies and those dependencies and how they connect.
The work you're doing is valuable and important, and it's not being undercut. All I could think was water.
Yeah.
So, yes, I wanted to be sure that we emphasize that. And then by the same token, I think in the work plan it talked about us being in alignment really with the equity committee. And so the equity committee is looking at all the work I think that's going on within the Early Learning Council's committee, and we're wanting to be sure that we apply the equity lens to all of that work. And so staff did take the information that we have put together thus far, and looking at where we're headed, and given that information to the Equity Council. Some of the feedback from that, your notes are much better than mine, was that, the curriculum approach that we've, that being able to have that diversity and not requiring a particular curriculum, they felt was a very positive thing. The other thing, when we were talking about, you've already pointed that out about the cultural and linguistic issues that we need to be looking at. There was a lot of support for that. We're saying too that we're not reducing the bar. What we're doing is we're just looking at expanding the potential for what could be within that bar. And so I think that particular aspect really got a lot of support from the Equity Council. They were also very positive about the moving the class, aspect. So essentially,
I'm sorry, can you explain that one a little bit? I wasn't following moving the class.
That we're not requiring, let me go back, like the shift of on-site class observations to the 4-star from the 5-star. And this would help us in getting feedback into the system. So moving it down so that on those relationships of the teacher and the child at that level. I don't know, was there anything greater than that? I think it was just recognizing that that's a critical component of our services for children. Also in mind, requiring that the ASQs is more of an optional, not a required aspect because of a variety of reasons, one of them being language, and also culturally appropriate practices. And what was another one?
Are you aware that they're standardizing the ASQ, because we're part of the standardization process, in 5 more languages?
Oh, good. When will that?
We're piloting, they've got it, and we're piloting it, and they're assessing whether or not how valid it is, that kind of stuff. I want just information.
Right. No, I think that's good. What we're seeing in this whole revision is making options available, but not making things so required. And I think that's the whole thing with the class. And also the fact that we're going from 33 standards to about 15. That's also kind of emphasizing the attempt to looking at the key components, not just throwing a whole bunch of things out there. So I think that's, is there anything? Overall, the standards don't feel less, but they feel more equitable, was a comment from the Equity Committee, and I thought that was a very positive comment, because they have a fairly good lens that they're looking at. They did raise the question about the issue that Albina had raised, about the professional development, and we're pleased that we were looking at that. And so even though they're the Equity Committee, it doesn't mean they don't know what else is going on out there. So they're bringing that information to their lens as well. So it was a good connectivity, and it's a good way for us to be sure that what we're doing is meeting those equity issues that are of values for us and for early learning. I think that, any other, do you remember anything?
No, I think that covered it. I mean, just overall, it was I think they felt very positive that we really heard the what was in the first draft was really reflective of what was heard in the community. And again, the quote, I think, of the meeting that really was like, was these don't feel less, they feel equitable.
Right.
And that was kind of the overarching tone of the whole conversation.
So kudos to you.
And it was very nice to be able to tell them about you guys as a committee, to say about the level of knowledge we were able to share that Sabrina is actually on it. So having that lens is definitely going to be there, but that the intimate knowledge that everybody has of QRIS on the committee, it was really great to be able to share you guys' expertise.
And we did acknowledge that we do have this work that we need to do in the school-age population, but that we have people that are helping us to give that insight so that we'll know what we should be looking at. So I think that's it, and then next time we'll meet again with them. And now we're on to I always get nervous, and you can tell me to not be nervous, but when I see finalized and we're in I feel like day 2 of some process, but really it's just the recommendations that we came up with on this handout. I hope you have this handout. Those first 5. So we need to review those and see if these are the things that we're going to go forward. Is that correct, Donna? Yeah. So, any comments, or should we take them one by one, or how do you want to process these with this one? It seems like these are all the things that we came up with. It was kind of nice to see them in a summary.
So are you looking for like an official,
saying that
since
these
we're being recorded and
Recorded,
everything
yes.
like that?
do these,
That would, I mean,
yeah. Are we in
I
agreement?
don't know how formal this processes, so.
I don't think it has to be Robert's rules of order.
Okay.
I would know this very well.
But consensus, I would say,
Yeah.
do we have consensus around the table that yes, this is what we said, and yes, this is what we agreed?
And making sure we capture, we'll make sure we capture it too, so there's something specific that you feel we didn't capture. This also helps to kind of couch them into different areas, so we know what formally we're putting forward and expecting results from, and other things that we're going to learn more about before we put things forward. And then these additional areas, I think, diving into, some of those you might even understand aren't really the purview of this committee, and so those are things we're going to be looking at, like, in that type of framework. So that's why we kind of like divided it into those three places, to give them each a home. Like, yes, formally we are requesting that these adjustments are being made to the system for the work of this group. These are areas we're learning more about, so we're not making anything set yet. We know we got input from you, so know you did get input, we're holding that, but we're waiting until we get a bigger picture to push things forward. And the other pieces are ones that we don't have actions on at this time, and some of them might be as discussed, no putting them forward, and some of them might be discovering they need to go into a different area, a different work group as part of this work to look at more deeply.
It just kind of says, like, okay, that one is okay, we can put that aside. These, we need to work on some more, and some of these we have to address, period. So just getting a consensus that, yes, this is what we agreed, and yes, we can put that over here in kind of the semi-done category. So
I agree that A through E captures what we talked about last time fully. I mean, I just reviewed this again to make sure that that was, yeah. So I feel like A through E captures that.
Thank you.
Me too, but I'm just wondering if anyone has questions, like, about what any of them mean. Because I don't know if I was on the phone last time, so I didn't see that. If there was anyone here who didn't participate last time,
I don't, are there any questions about what this says? I was just going to point out on B, that was when we identified that we hope to engage you to help us in working with the communities on that.
I wasn't able to attend in person last time, and I did provide my feedback in writing, and I feel like I've been responsive.
And I know that C says that we're going to update the language, so we just need to be sure we don't forget to update the language. But
I wonder, so I do like how you divided these into the three sections. I'm looking at the additional areas, number 3, and then little Roman numeral. I. Oh, it goes I. The second I. I mean, that just is the one that stood out to me. I understand why that was removed. I wonder if there's a way that we could have, like, as a part of this, suggestions but not requirements, that's really in writing when we go, in the QRIS documents that we go through. I don't know if that was a part of the discussion last time, but I would love to see that. So people don't lose sight of it. That's an equity thing too.
Right.
We should always be moving toward,
right.
Even though our population doesn't in all of education doesn't currently reflect this population.
Sometimes the population changes so fast that you can't.
Well, that's right. Yeah. So,
would there be a place where we could say best practice or?
Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah.
Or suggestion. I like best practice even better.
And if I may, I think actually part of our conversation today about the continuous quality improvement plan, it would be great to kind of keep these in your mind as we're going through those, because what you said about the best practice and keeping, the standards, what are the few and the powerful that we want to measure, that doesn't mean the other stuff isn't important.
Right.
And so that's what we'll kind of be talking through later today around the continuous quality improvement. So it might be just good to, I actually have that literally written on here. This is part of the CQI conversation in a lot of these areas. So that works.
Yeah, I was noticing that too when we're looking at the professional, what is it called?
Christina,
education qualification.
appreciate you bringing it up, because I thought that this was still further discussion. But I thought all we were doing was agreeing on this. I wasn't agreeing that we didn't need further discussion on all the other stuff.
Right.
So I appreciate you bringing that up, because I feel the same way.
Yes. No, in fact, I agree. We need to start, we're going to agree that A through E we agree on, and now we're going to work on the second, A, D.
And the
additional areas. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, because I did the same thing when I was looking at it, and then I thought, oh no, it's on the agenda, that means we can work on it, because I thought, I don't think we're there yet. So.
I think, Shauna, that's why you put like, this is requiring further action.
Yes.
These are concrete things that we need to continue to attend to.
Yes, and we need to just figure out where they fit into the purview of this group, and then direct them if it's not in the purview of this group, so that information is still put forward.
So I think on my own notes in pencil, I'm gonna write an F that would be like include best practice, but and take it out of there if we are able to address it in other areas, just so that we don't forget.
I'm wondering if we should do the quality information before we finish the rest of these, if there's going to be stuff in the quality just not thought of that.
We could, I mean, I think Shauna has it, like where some of these other recommendations come through. So we could could we come back and visit this after the CP?
That's what I'm thinking, because if we see that there's something already here, then we want to pull that, just like the educator qualification proposal. It really defines, I'm so pleased to see it's got all these areas that we can say, it's not just your degree or whatever, but it's this, which I also think speaks to number 2, that I too, second I.
This is very much a living document. I don't think you want static. I think the A through E is what we need to make sure is static, and we all agree because we're formally putting that forward, and the rest of it is kind of a piece of our work plan. These are the other things that we're looking at and working on and trying to fit into the process. And so as we do that, we will be coming back to you guys with more updates for this and more information that we're carrying forward. So this will be a continual part of our process to make sure we're formally offering forward what we can and keeping track of the pieces we don't want to lose.
Yeah, I think it would be good to have that, because when I remember reviewing the continuous quality, it talks about some of the processes and some of the things that we look at, and we refer to them here, but we don't have that content yet. Does that make sense? I feel like I got the outline, but I don't know what I'm outlining. Okay. Would that be okay if we say, are we thumbs up on A through E, the first A through E? Is that okay? Because I don't want to go over that again. Okay. All right. Looks like the majority says yes. So then, can we switch to the quality information? Because I think that really helps us to give background to the next question. And
do you want to check and make sure everyone from the phone is giving us a thumbs up too?
Oh, sorry.
Just because, you know what I mean, because we got the majority of the room here, the vast majority, we have a couple people that didn't do a sign. The vast majority in this room did give a thumbs up. Can you folks just from the phone speak up and give us their thumbs up that are on the committee? So Betty, Chelsea, Marina, Robin, Christina.
Christina just let me know her phone went out.
Oh.
So,
I guess you could put it in
Robin,
the chat.
I think I'm doing a thumbs up. Just thumbs up, no disagreement.
Thanks, Robin.
Betty, Marina have all given thumbs up on the chat box.
And Chelsea.
And Chelsea.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you. I keep forgetting the phone people. I'm looking right over them.
You need little pictures of their faces.
Yeah. So then maybe before we go through these other areas, maybe it would be helpful to hear that content from the quality, since we keep referencing it.
Yeah.
It feels like it's the shadow in the room. Yeah. Bring it forward. And then, if it's okay, then we'll go over the rest of these so that we'll have all the content. I've been sharing with Sue Miller, the chair. I said that we have some of the essence, but we've been getting all of the contributing information, and she keeps saying, what do you mean by essence? And I said, well, we haven't done the standards because we're trying to get all the information that we need and help inform us, our actions on the standard. And this quality piece, I think, is another part of that, which seems to play out when we say that it's different. You know, I think that that'll become more clear when we look at the quality.
All right.
So if we can move that on the agenda, then we'll come back to looking at these areas for further information.
This continuous quality improvement one. All right, thank you. It's okay, no. So in your packet, you have a handout, kind of about the concept. Just because, especially since we have phone friends, I asked TRI to help me put together a PowerPoint that really kind of laid that out to kind of talk through. So we'll be essentially talking through this this document. And so let me see if this works. Yeah. No. Sure.
You have to aim it.
Next slide, please, Kristen.
You can touch this.
Yeah. That's,
Fun will
that's
not
my
be
board.
right here?
Yeah.
There you go.
No. Oh, I am so happy right now.
You can see her face. Very, very happy.
Have you ever used one before? No. Oh, sexy.
Wow, let's go back one or two. I got a little click happy here. Am I not going
Show her
back?
how to change the colors and so she can write on it.
Oh, no, you gave me that power.
You're going forward. You're going way forward.
No, I'm going the other way. Cannot click. There we go.
There you did.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we will try this now. Calmly, because I was a little excited there. Okay. All right. So the concept of continuous quality improvement is also thinking about the tiers and participation. And so still encompasses 5 tiers of Spark. And so one of the big shifts, and I think one of the big things that we heard from the community is about what is participation in the program. And so this concept actually really opens it up to anybody interested, whether you're licensed or not, whether you even have an intention of being licensed or not. It's really there for programs, any program that wants to work on continuous quality improvement. And so how it's thought about is that in order to know who's participating is a simple application that just says, we're working on it. And so really to capture those pieces, and that gives them, would give them access to various resources, a continuous quality improvement plan that they could use to start working through, access to the standards and those pieces. So if I kind of envision so you're thinking of opening a child care facility. You could log on and kind of look at all the parts and pieces to participate, or you're thinking of being a family child care provider, you could open that up. So it really broadens it to any individual who's looking to care for children. And then when we look at the commitment to quality, that's kind of taking it to the next step in terms of you've begun a continuous quality improvement process and you're actively engaged in the process. You're doing reflection, you're looking at resources and kind of assessing your readiness. And still at this point, it's really not linked to the foundational health and safety standards. It's really looking at that improvement component and where the best practices, and because there's many things in the standards, like if you aren't doing these best practices, you're not going to be able to get to the standard of quality. I think screen time is a pretty clear example. Like, you're not going to have good adult-child interaction if the kids are in front of the TV. And so it's kind of helping them think through those best practices to help really implement the standards. And so this component really is focused very specifically on that improvement, and we aren't looking at including like the number of years in business as was in the past, compliance issues, but really, again, that work that they're actively working on a continuous quality improvement plan. And I think there will have to be some other criteria in terms of when resources are allocated, financial. And so those would be separate from that commitment to quality in terms of actively working, and then the 3, 4, and 5-star standards that you've seen. So that's the concept that we're bringing to you today in terms of that.
So in here, it talks about the less on a rating perspective on number 1. So that's,
and whether you're licensed or how, it's really just about anyone caring for children. Here's the program to help you help kids. And so again, this is really looking at it kind of a self-directed way for programs, but also knowing that any resource, looking at it as being any supports that are out there for the various programs, that anyone would be able to access this to help programs. So whether you're an R&R, whether you're a Head Start, whether it's a Family Child Care Association, a school age group, could all kind of use these tools in order to support the continuous quality improvement of those programs, no matter where they come in. So it's not even that it's sequential, right? It's just wherever you come in at. And so the Cqi process is really kind of set around 3 components. And those really look at the reflection. So really having a program think about what they're doing, reflect on their current practices, or if they haven't even started, what will their practices be? The resources, provide online links to materials and resources to help programs improve, as well as I think all the other resources that we have as a system. And then kind of the readiness is looking at, when does a program feel that they're ready to put forth their information and ultimately, have it reviewed for a rating. And so it, again, looks within those components, it's really that educational opportunity for programs to learn about best practices. And so a lot of the resources would be those links to the best practices of how your program is going to need to look and feel within those best practices to meet the standard. So it's one way to think about it. What really kind of struck with me is like, this component is really like the standards plus. So here are the standards, the few and the powerful, the ones that we measure, but we know that there's a bunch of other best practices that need to be accomplished in order to have those standards met. When I think about the standards, it's more about the implementation, and the Cqi is more about the best practices and how you build your program to be implementing those standards. Questions on that? Like conceptually, does that make sense? I know the devil's in the detail, but.
Well, I don't know. It seems like we've always said that this Spark is a pathway. This seems like it's defining more of a path, whereas before it was more of a hurdle. Yeah. I don't know.
Check.
Yeah, right.
Oh no, I don't have that.
and this is a growth. Maybe that's, I don't know.
No, you're exactly what the intent was based on all the community feedback and everything we learned. That's definitely what the team has been trying to reflect in this, is exactly.
I know somebody to
follow good coaching.
Yeah. That's a good point though, because so that we see that the pieces are coming together, they aren't just out there.
I just want to make sure I'm understanding. So I really like the process that you've outlined, and it seems really clear, and I like that people can jump in wherever they are at the moment, wherever they're ready to take a step. I guess I do have a question about the idea of continuous quality improvement. So in my mind, continuous quality improvement, that's continuing after you've reached a 3, 4, or 5-star, and I just want to make sure that I was understanding that too.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and actually when I was working with the TRI team, just to help me make sure that I was understanding the full concept that the group's been working on. I asked actually that same question. And really, so if you're like, I've got this, I'm going to submit all this, but part of, even once you get your rating, is having a continuous quality improvement plan, because that's part of the ongoing journey, that ongoing growth.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yep.
Sure. Okay.
No, it's a great question. So this, kind of to put it a little more concrete, is kind of what an example of the educator qualifications might, kind of look like. I mean, high level, there'd obviously be a lot more detail, but that the reflection is like, okay, am I intentionally planning professional development for my staff, for myself? Am I being intentional about that? Do I have a professional development plan? Do I know where I want to go? Do I know what information is needed? Some of the resources that would be within that would be looking at linking to the professional development plan, linking to the ORO training calendar, contacting information from CCR&R for support, and then that readiness component about, do I have the plan? Does my personnel qualification reflect current information in the program? So it kind of helps you think through, ask you some key questions. I believe we have something in the chat.
I can read it right there.
Oh, I can read it. This board is so amazing.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I've been behind you the whole time.
I am a dork. Okay. Do those resources and materials already exist, or would they need to be developed? I think it's a mixture of both. I think some resources exist as the CCR&R, other entities that we would want to link with, and I think there need to be some development as well. I also, as I have been kind of asking some of those similar questions, is it actually would be also a set of resources that could grow with the system as well as part of its own continuous quality improvement, is that out of the gate, there'd be some, but that would be something that could be continuously built on and improved over the course. Great question.
Kind of like Pam's comment about the coaching.
Yeah.
I mean, there are various levels of that, and you can get to that. Let's say you're tier 5, but there's still things that need to be.
Question about professional development plan. Programs that I have worked with do not like the ORO professional development plan form. And you capitalized it here, you talked about it, so I'm wondering, and it used to be a required piece of evidence, or it is a required piece of evidence. I'm wondering if there can be more flexibility in what a professional development plan looks like, or if it's going to be really
Or look at it because it hasn't been looked at for years.
So I think this is just the feedback we want to hear. That's one of the conversations is it a specific, or is it just having one? Because some organizations have their own that they use, the same with a continuous quality improvement plan. Other organizations have other tools that are being used. So I think that's been part of the conversation. And so if I can, I guess, paraphrase what I feel the sense is that I'm getting from this committee, is that having that flexibility to use a tool, it's not so much the tool that's being used, but that there's something being used is the sense I'm getting. Okay.
With the idea that we should probably include certain components in whatever tool is used.
Yeah, right. Some kind of, like a criteria, or just that it's not.
It has to include X, Y, and Z.
Yeah, right, okay.
Yeah, which seems logical, have a beginning and end and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Those key things.
Because you could have a not so good professional development plan that doesn't really get you somewhere.
Exactly.
So what are those components that make up those pieces? Okay.
So this is Shauna, and I just want to remind folks to go ahead and say their names before they speak for the folks on the phone. And for folks on the phone, you missed it. Susan was one who spoke earlier about the professional development plan, and there was lots of nods and responses in the room for that as well, for those of you on the phone.
All right. So this is a little more detail, and you have this in your handout as well. But just to, I kind of showed you the slides, but this is kind of a way to think about what that standard would look like, and then kind of within the a continuous quality improvement plan of what those reflective questions would be, and what some of the resources and how that might look, and I think, and then kind of those readiness checks that you're asking yourself. And so I think you can see how this can really grow as resources are developed, as new resources come into our state at times. And so would be, you know, I think the concept is that we'd be able to continually add to this. I keep looking at Tom to make sure I'm not messing up on all this. Okay. So that's just a little more detail of what kind of the team is thinking about what that would look like.
So this is filling in, the previous slide had the general categories, and this is more of the content of that.
Yeah, of what it might look like.
Again, this is Susan. I'm thinking about how school age is not reflected very well in this example. I know from experience that going to Oregon QRIS resources doesn't have anything for school age on it.
And I think that's a great example of where in the resources, like are there, I mean, I know you work with Oregon Ask, are there resources that Oregon Ask could offer that we would put on there? And so I think that's a great example of how that resource list can grow to provide the various age groups. I could also see different pedagogies, having resources up there. So I think that's a clear example of how this can grow. It isn't a stagnant document. Okay.
This is Pam Corey. I'm just noting that on the resources currently, is there any way for just like, for example, set 2 trainings that you can just have an embedded definition? Because in working with our partners, they don't know what you mean on that. And if it was just had an embedded definition that would pop up or at minimum a link to it or something, I think it would be helpful.
Yeah.
So is that the set 2 requirements for oral? Is that what that represents? Set 2 is that, this is Sabrina from Alpina. You're doing good. Is that where that language comes from, is the set 2, set 3 trainings out of oral? So in order for somebody to meet that, they have to be trained by a master trainer through oral.
But this isn't a standard. This is just access to those.
So I was just thinking helpful in terms of them, because anybody can enter this process, right?
Yeah.
So they're gonna, you know, I'm like, I think I want to do childcare, and I go in and I'm clicking around, and I'm like, what does set 2 mean? And I just meant give them a quick and simple, even a direction on where they could go to find it.
And I think like anywhere that there's a resource, be sure that it's clear what it is.
Mm-hmm.
If I can paraphrase again, jargon-free, what it is, and provide the links and the ways to go learn more about it is kind of the feedback.
Yeah, I think if you're opening this up, especially to folks who are not classically in the system, you know, those license exempt programs who don't know what ORO is, and having those explanations.
Because that sorry, go ahead, Pam.
No, okay. You're the chair. You can.
No, you just leave us
No, I was just trying to link it back to the idea that for those who may not be in the stars but want to start with the quality, but this can be off-putting because you don't know the lingo, you hear all this, you feel like it's almost a club that you can't get into. So the more we can make it more user-friendly, the more we'll get people to be able to come into that.
And I think it's a great point, and again, these are examples, and one of that is simplifying, but I think it's always a good reminder about the jargon, the simplified language, especially with, it's not necessarily people who have traditionally been in our system. So this next piece is really kind of giving just an idea, sorry, ma'am.
One more. No, I know that I'm being a pain on this, but is this going to be ADA accessible? Meaning, do you know what I mean when I say?
Yeah.
Okay, so.
I think we'll need to make it,
okay.
Absolutely.
Okay, just wanted to make sure.
Yeah, no, these are, you get busy. There's 14,000 details to think of, so these are great.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's just the font alone.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and no, these are just the concept and
I know, I
examples.
just wanted
Yeah.
to make sure that we were thinking.
Yeah,
It's good to remind that to say that this is.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Sorry, oh, no, I was just checking now that I have the chat box at my disposal. I agree with that. And then this is kind of the way that the team is thinking about what that CQI plan would kind of look like in terms of taking you through those questions so that you can kind of be self-assessing. So, you know, really working on limiting the amount of writing, because that was information that we heard, and making, you know, having a tool be available to help kind of think through those. I know, I mean, like a think sheet, you know, it's like, okay, that's helping with those tools to think about those components, any notes, and then, you know, date met, like, to help you kind of track where you're at if you're working with a coach. You know, can be a tool to kind of work through those, is kind of how the team is thinking about it, having those through it, but really limiting the writing component.
So would this be pulled out for individual employees in a childcare setting, or is this for the licensing or the director who's doing all of the work? How does this piece fit into that?
It would, I think how it's thought of is it would be whoever is thinking about the quality of a program. So it's whoever is doing that work. So it might be the director, it might be a site director, it could be a lead teacher at a facility. I think the intent is not to be that it has to even necessarily be turned in. I'm looking at Tom. Turned in. It's that it's a tool. So it's whoever is doing the quality work needs to be asking those questions, and whether you do it, like, I will just say as a past director, I'd probably do this with my staff.
I was just confused with the first person, so, I mean, I can see it
Oh, I see what
pulled
you're
out and pulled into each individual employee, can work on this.
I/program. Yeah.
Where I was kind of, where does this fit? But I like the idea of both, actually.
Yeah. And I think, so the intention is, especially like family childcare is one person, so you talk about program, they don't think, so I think some work on what that language is, because it's really the intention is the person who's asking, who should be asking those questions, and how they choose to do that, and with whom. We have something in the chat box that works so well. In our area, CCR&R is called CCRN, Child Care Resource Network. Is that how it is everywhere? Just to be consistent with verbiage. Actually, Child Care Resource and Referrals have different names in different parts of the state. So there's not a consistent name. I know in Lane it's Family Connections, as an example. So it's Child Care Resource and Referral System. We use the term CCR&R, but they may call themselves something different in different regions.
Okay, Tom, before you go on, I really like this tool. I really appreciate that. But, and I hate to throw the registry under the bus again, but if we're going to be very dependent on them as a system to inform how people get rated and how they plan their professional development, is there any plan to increase their capacity so they can be a little speedier, a little more on the spot with technical assistance for folks? Programs I work with have really struggled with working with them.
That's good feedback. I mean, because it's linked to the licensing and the training, we're always looking.
It's bad for them all to participate in the system, but when the system is frustrating, it's hard to keep them going.
So this is Sabrina, and I just want to throw something out there. I'm actually on another committee with Oro, and we are in the process of trying to look at faster ways of getting documents to them, getting things to them, helping them design systems using Child Plus for programs to be able to give them stuff and it goes through faster for areas. So I do know that there is some work happening at Oro where they're trying to be more supportive and being able to work with us and getting things done faster.
Yeah, I really want to support them, and I like the system. I want them to work faster.
And this is Sam Holmes, will be the dead horse, and they're working on having employers be able to have access of employees. Training.
Yay! I think the biggest thing too is being able to scan or fax something. It is ridiculous
ridiculous turnaround time.
Yeah.
I'm struggling so bad, like, we're on renewal, and my licensor knows, like, she can see everything before I can, but to have to go into every single person and have them come and sit down with me, you know, when I'm family childcare, but I have a lot of staff that they have to come sit down with me, pull up their, you know, professional development, and we're like, it's just so frustrating, because I feel like I'm going in circles, and I don't have the time to pull my teachers in, you know, to say, hey, I need to figure out where we are, and so we put on a tent, because there was such a turnaround time, and they didn't realize some of the certificates didn't go in, then they've lost a lot of my stuff, and it's just beyond frustrating.
So the one thing I can share with Sabrina is that I think come July, the hope is that they do have a data entry system where at least for the first baby step is that employees can go in and start uploading through the automated system through their own oral account. And then it's moving forward to try to get the same system in place.
So we're a little off topic, but it's very true. But I just to kind of close this loop, the access for the director to be able to see the hours is a part of the ELIS, the new Early Learning Information System. That's how program directors, whomever needs to look at the training records, that's when they're going to have access, is when they can log into the Early Learning Information System to be able to look at that. So that is absolutely a part of it. We just have to get the system built.
And for this committee, though, I think what we can say, the complementary system of oral has some implication on how effective we can be with QRIS.
Yes.
I think that's the learning from this part. And so just like with other professional development, we need to keep that awareness and see how we can build those bridges. So that's good to bring it up, because we could build the ship and then it goes down because we forgot to put in a hole or something. I don't know.
So again, this, I kind of just like this graphic too that they put together in terms of the reflect, resource, readiness. It's that, an infinity loop. It doesn't end. It's a journey. It's a progress. You're moving up, and it's not even really linear. It's a journey. It's the Spark journey, and that what are the resources and supports that we can provide. And so that's really what the concept is around the continuous quality improvement, and that's really where the resources, the questions get you around those best practices, and again, can be added to, adjusted. The other kind of getting a little more nuts and bolts about the concept, is that, it will be simple, easy to follow, and not require extensive writing. You can move back and forth between the sections, flexible, and allow users to choose the level of engagement when uploading evidence. Resources will be immediately available, dynamic, allow for changes, we've talked about that. Can access information to help refer users how to use resources. Can be used to monitor programs, progress, pull data, especially once we have the early learning information system and all of this is uploaded. Like, that in and itself is a tool to access those resources, be able to click and say, what is this Oregon registry? What does this mean? And really encourage and recognize the quality improvements and not the rating. So these were really the features that the team holds through to, based on the input and the feedback.
So I really like this. Is this going to apply to the initial Spark application that everyone does at the very beginning? Or is it going to be similar online options and notebook after notebook?
It will be, I think we always need to have a paper version. That's a given. And so the concept of the continuous quality improvement is you may upload all your information first, and then you have the continuous quality improvement afterwards. You can enter it at any point. A program could utilize the tools at whatever point. So there's not like the application to be a Spark participating program is a very simple application, doesn't include a continuous quality improvement plan. To become a commitment to quality program, that's where you're going to demonstrate that you're actively doing continuous improvement. So whether you're using this tool or you can show another tool that you're using, that's how you would kind of demonstrate those components. And what that criteria is for how those is going to be more about how that's met. So it's trying to get it less form dependent, and I have to fill out this form, into the process, the implementation, the actions that are being done.
So you'll do initial paperwork to get in the system, the Spark participating, and then you'll work on your quality to improve, and that will show kind of where you're going and what you want to achieve, like what tier you're shooting for. Is that kind of the idea? And then the next step would be meeting those tier requirements, if that's the direction you want to go in, or you just want to improve what you can, whether it fits or not. Is that my...
No, I mean, I think it's whether you even want to go for a rating. We may have programs who don't want to, but these tools are there for whatever. That's more the concept than the step-by-step process. I think that's why that infinity loop really shows that, you know, I could see like a nationally accredited program saying, I'm just going to get my 5-star, and I'm just going to upload all my evidence because I got it right here. But at the end, there needs to be a continuous quality improvement. So they might just start that journey after they've submitted. It's not necessarily process order.
So, Sabrina, and I have a question. I was waiting until you got to the end to bring this up. And if, I'm really curious to wonder, with this new, I mean, we're looking at C1Q, C2Q, with this new step potential process or tier process, how does this or will this, or is there conversation about how this will impact programs that receive ERDC? Because I know currently we went through the hassle of we couldn't get ERDC reimbursement for any site that did not have a 3-star rating.
That was tied to a contract, though, which is different than the voucher system of ERDC.
So is there, like, ability to figure out kind of how that plays an impact or a role with ERDC?
So, this is Pam. I think what I'm hearing Dawn said is that for the children that were attending a site that were not a 3, you could have individually billed, you just couldn't put them on the contract. So you could always get the money. You just couldn't have, there are some entities that get DHS contracts, and that was a criteria for the DHS contract, but it didn't mean that you couldn't bill for those families on individual vouchers, like the rest of the people that don't have contracts.
So it's a methodology issue, not a availability.
Yeah, it's not necessarily a Spark issue. It definitely connects it, and that is, you know, in the Spark bonuses, that, you know, that's part of the 3, 4, 5-star for the voucher system, and then the contracts are a separate negotiation and what the requirements are in there. So what, oh, sorry, another question.
And then Susan. Sorry, Susan. So you're going to be collecting a lot of data and stuff in this system where people upload it. Will the Early Learning Division, TRI, anyone be using that in some way?
Sure.
How will that, what are the plans for all that stuff that's going to be in there?
I'm not sure yet. We're just trying to get it built, to be honest.
Okay.
But I think, you know, I think for our own systems, continuous quality improvement, I think is the safest. Clearly, we're going to want to use that. We're going to want to understand. One of the things we've talked about is, you know, even being able to have all that information to even help us what additional resources are needed, like where are programs at, what are needed. We'll have this wealth of information to be able to assess where we even need to maybe target certain resources too. So I think that is the like the most global way to really help us understand what the needs are.
Yeah, I think it's such a great opportunity.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
Lots of stuff.
Yeah.
What to do with your stuff?
So what we're hoping, oh wait, I guess I have one more, is again, this is just to highlight the infinity of this, right? They're skipping ahead to, you know, if you're looking at reflection, resources, readiness, you can just go right to readiness. You can do something there, let me get my notes because the chat box, so just submit the evidence, right? You could go step by step. You could go there and then go back and looking. And so it really, it's not a sequential, which for some of us, type A's, I gotta say, is a little challenging. But in terms of program improvement, that is how it works.
You could have evidence in one thing and be starting at square one
In
or something that you're like, I have to think about that, I never even thought about that. And so that fluidity, sorry, this is Pam, that fluidity is good.
Yeah. It's just, and it's never over, and I think that's it's never over. We're always working on ourselves, right? No. And so what we're hoping to do now is, in order to give the team that's taking all of your feedback and input at that policy level, is, you know, all the rich conversation that we've had here is being noted, but also to kind of pull up these two policy questions. And so the two questions is, does the Cqi process support continuous quality improvement for a variety of programs and their uniqueness? And then do providers have more equitable access to Spark in this Cqi process? And what we were hoping to do is, Kristen is actually going to create a Word document so that we can answer those questions, that you guys can answer those questions as a committee. And then she will write them so that we can have agreement of the committee's answers to these questions, so that we can, as we have, you've seen our work plan, some pretty good timelines moving, so that we can keep this work rolling. Does that make sense and feel okay to everybody? Okay, so our first question: does this Cqi process support continuous quality improvement for a variety of programs and their uniqueness? And I'll also be watching the chat box if people on the phone would rather chat something in, so we'll get it on there as well.
This is Pam. I feel like it does allow variety of, you know, I'm coming obviously from a very center-based, but it does feel like, and I would want to turn to our colleagues here, that whether or not your family child care, Head Start Center, whatever, that it's accessible. That the second question, I have more of a negative answer, but the first one I think is that it's very accessible. Okay. Do you want me to answer that?
So can we maybe try to stick with one question and then we'll go to the next?
I'll say my best.
I would say that I also feel like it's accessible, with the caveat that I think that we need to do some work on some of the forms and the connection with the registry to make that work well for our other partners that are not currently deep in the system. The forms, some of them are very difficult. We've got K-12s that already have their own pieces, and those pieces are not really acknowledged within the system. So I think we've got some work around those.
This is Susan. I agree with Eva, and I think that not just the forms, but some of the resources that are linked need to be appropriate. You know, we need to have a good variety of things that we set at least a little bit to say we think this would be a good PD plan to use that has these specific criteria in it, those kinds of things. So with you, the tools and the resources need to be expanded, I think.
Yeah, so essentially, yes, the concept, making sure that the resources are clear, appropriate, and show a broad scope of different types of programs, and I would add pedagogies, because I think if we had someone from a Montessori program in here, they would say that.
I also think there's a lot of tension about QIS not being reflective for my program. Like, a lot of people will say that this doesn't reflect me. And if we have a very select few tools, and we have to be careful about that. Well, the tools they linked here still don't reflect me, so I'm still going to dismiss this whole thing as not for me. So the task of putting in those tools, I'm glad that's not me. Because they have to be very inclusive and broad, but specific.
Well, and I guess I just ask a follow-up, because I think it would be helpful. I mean, because what you're expressing is essentially the intent to do. I'm wondering about, like, messaging or how it could look so that people can see it in that light, and that in and of itself is a growing tool. I'm wondering how that might be able to be described, because what you guys are all saying is exactly what I heard the intent of it to be. So I'm trying to figure out how can we, like, is it just additional ones to add? I mean, I'm trying to figure out how do we describe that so nobody feels that it's closed when we show this and roll this out.
I think one of the things that I'm feeling is that I've dealt with a lot of people who feel like this whole process is very overwhelming. And if tools are available, they will try to use those tools, and they don't really know where else to go. So something in the messaging about if there's a tool here, if the tools listed here don't work for you, what does? And it's okay to have something else that does.
They would have the option to identify something that does work.
Yeah, because some people, it's like when you, I used to work in a yarn shop. My mom used to own a yarn shop, and people would come in and they would get a pattern and they go, I want to make that, in that color with that yarn. Like, they can't think beyond what they see in the example. So I'm worried that if our examples are too specific, that people will be able to see outside of the example and realize that the process is for them, even though the example they need isn't listed.
So maybe from kind of a policy perspective, is that prior to rolling out, we need it vetted by multiple, the down and dirty work needs to be vetted to make sure that that feel doesn't come across when providers, because of past experiences, because
I think that makes a lot of sense. I think the which audience does it speak to is really key. I mean, with our preschool promise providers, we're not childcare.
Yeah.
This says nothing to us, yet we still want them to participate in this system when they're working with preschoolers. So making sure that we get that connection with them is really important, and not just with them, but with all of our partners. Vetting it makes good sense, and they have to have something in the resources to speak to them.
Yeah. Otherwise, it's going to.
Otherwise, it's why am I participating in this system? It doesn't make any sense to me. And it's one more thing that we're asking them to do, and they may decide to bypass it, and we don't want that to happen. Great.
Pam.
Well, I noticed you had your hand up, so.
This is Cheryl. I guess I was just thinking, as a part of this, how important it is to have resources in different languages or for different groups, but I think it would be valuable to get those resources from those groups or involve them in, determining what's helpful instead of
just vetting. I got you. Yeah.
Finding resources and saying this should be helpful to you, but I think those groups will have ideas on.
That's a great idea. So maybe more of us vetting the resources that they want shared.
Yeah.
I think if we come up with some criteria, like we want resources on, how to guide behavior, and we want resources on, those type of things, and then letting them fill in, pull together some groups that can help.
Asking other groups to submit anything that they found.
Yeah.
In that, so that school age could participate that way, and CQR, so that those of you who had that experience and still get to contribute that.
And I'm sure some of the, the quality improvement sessions around the state for with different networks and different groups can provide a lot of information on where they've ended up going to pull together materials for programs need.
So essentially, like, let's, in the development of these resources, engage all the partners, and any individual doing that to submit possible resources, for what goes up.
What a better way to get buy-in if they know they were a part of.
And who can know everything, right?
Well, but some of those individuals have been doing this for some time, and they've already been down paths that maybe they'll say these are not worthwhile, or this looks good, but when you try to apply it, it doesn't work. Why not use that expertise?
Yeah, that's great. Do we feel ready to go to the next policy question? I feel pretty.
Katie, this is Betty on the phone. I have a quick question before we move on.
Yes.
Yes?
So in kind of building off of what was just being said of the idea of using people's prior experiences with some of these resources to inform the tool, I'm wondering if there's going to be any sort of soft rollout or field test of this program or this tool before it becomes widely available, so that it doesn't feel like we're sort of building the plane as we're flying it. I mean, I think part of what I'm hearing from everyone here is there's a lot of concerns about how well it'll do what it's supposed to do. Like, we all love the concept, but we're concerned about its ability to deliver in terms of resources and structure. Is there any opportunity to test this tool and like make sure that it does all that before it becomes available out in the field?
I think we can definitely look at that. I think that's a great, in terms of, the collecting, the going out and doing some engagement work on it, possibly kind of maybe a soft launch of it. In terms of that, I think those are things that could be thought of.
And that's our work plan.
I have an idea too, that it just was triggered. Because I think one of your questions, Dawn, was, I don't know exactly how you phrased it, but will people look at this and fully understand that they can participate at any level, and that it's just, I'm calling it a circular process. Yeah. So when we're talking to some people in the community and getting their ideas for these other things, I wonder if there would be like a variety of 3 kind of graphics that people could look at and say, and so we could show them and say, does this one mean this to you, or this one mean this to you, or so that you get what I mean. Yeah, I do. Yeah, because that graphic was good and you loved it, but I have a different one in my mind. You know what I mean? Yeah, so yeah. I think to reach all types of child care, preschool, caregivers. Yeah. Maybe there's one that will reach most. Yeah. Just on a first look at it and go, that's interesting to me. Yeah. Yeah, no, that's great.
That was Kristen speaking.
Sorry.
No problem.
I probably will forget next time too.
As people have been talking, now the one thought that keeps coming to my mind, we have different titles and we have different entities. We are child care providers, but we're all early learning educators. It might be if we can kind of preference that all of us are in early learning, whether you're doing 6-week-olds or 4-year-olds. But that is our base, but we have different maybe focuses or titles. Because I think that would help us too to say this is what it's all about. Because that's what we're all talking about, is that early learning component. And how do we get, now I say early learning, school age to me is part of that. I mean, it's that learning component that we're wanting to stress, not the title. It popped up in my head. I think we need to stress that. Yeah.
This is Pam, and I think that a couple of Kristen and Donalda's point is a visual that does that instead of just words and concepts. And then maybe to help move us along to the next piece, I think I really have enjoyed everybody's input. I just felt that all that input was what I was going to say on the next question. Because I thought the first question was about the concept of it, and then the second question is about accessibility, and it is those forms and stuff like that. And that's where I was going to say all the stuff that you guys said.
Well, I might have interpreted wrong. This is Sean. I just want to make sure that you go back. We've had some chat, so there's not much room in that chat box. Betty did share a little bit about her perspective on things. Marina also noted that she agreed with Eva that she has concerns as well with ORO as it currently stands, not making sense for K-12 programs and having a better link to TCPC. What is TCPC?
Teaching Standards and Practices. TSPC.
TSPC, got it. And Christina said, I also think this has the potential to be accessible and successfully support programs, but it depends on the resources and supports that are available to programs and the areas where programs are located. Some resources do not work that well, or in reality not accessible in rural areas compared to suburban areas. So especially that point Christina made about the suburban, the rural areas in our state, and keeping that in mind too.
Oh, good, I see she's trying to pull the chat and put it into the list.
Yeah, and it'll be printed off, we can save it on there, Kristen, too, just to directly add, we'll get it in a Word doc. Yeah.
This is Pam, I just really want to reiterate what Shauna says, is that I think that the whole accessibility piece, it's not just language, some people don't feel, it's learning modes, it's how does a person learn and move on, and the state needs to recognize that you've got to put the money out there to have people making connections with people, because we know that that's when change happens. And it can't just be an electronic system. And to me, I don't know that people really, I mean people, I just meant we need to put the money where the mouth is.
With the money that we have. Yeah. Noting 1.8 billion.
This is Maria, and just to add to that, I was going to say with the technology, is looking at your audience, and we have a particular work works with a lot of family childcare Latinos who do not know how to use a computer, and so the online, while it's easier for me as quality improvement to be able to help and send things quicker, it's challenging for them to access. I mean, a lot of their portfolios are even handwritten, so even to type it up is a barrier. And also, the resources, if it's just documents or writing, it's the comprehension piece of things. So what type of resources? Is it classes? Is it hands-on activity? Is it videos? Like, what is it? Because I think that determines how effective it could be and acceptable to that particular audience.
Videos are good.
Then I think the hands-on demonstration, and I've done a lot of training with providers, and I feel like they need the practice and they need the visual in order to put that into practice of their own. Just having somebody, academically talk to them about how to deal with challenging behaviors, but not demonstrating how does that really work, is not very effective in my experience.
I think it'll be really interesting because I can see really tying in when we talk about the supports and especially targeted supports, because that's, I guess, how I'm thinking about that. That's where the human capital, the relationships, that's like, there's resources that people have access to, and then there's the supports to help them achieve it. And so I think that'll be a really rich conversation to kind of think through of resources versus supports too, and is there a way to, how does that all come together?
Nelda, it seems like that fits too with our growing and improvement on one of our first recommendations here, that if we're going to reach out to a variety of providers, they're at a variety of different levels, and they need various opportunities for that growing and improvement that they want. It's just if we don't have it there, they can't access it.
Do we want, go ahead, Eva. I want to go back and tag on when we're talking about where we use resources and getting the people out there, and I just want to add in there that we need some people to work on some system work with things working together. So when we talk about our K-12 and we're looking at the PD pieces, those are really important, but we've also got some issues around background checks. And we've got to get those things figured out, because that's another reason why our K-12 will just bypass and not stick with them. So,
wait, that's another reason why what? I missed what you said.
That's why, another reason why our K-12 would decide not to participate or their early childhood programs to become licensed, they have to do 2 separate background checks. And then they're looking at subs, and they have to do background checks in 2 different ways, and their bus drivers have to do them in 2 different ways. Those are
and if they have Head Start, they have to have the second person on the bus that has to go through the process.
And those are us using their resources instead of putting some resources forward and figuring it out.
Big issues.
They're very big issues.
Do we want to kind of look back at because we kind of had talked about that additional areas requiring further action, and I had, you know, in my notes in reading this, felt that it kind of looked too at the CQI component. Is there anything people would want to add to the notes around this piece? I think specifically around some of the, like the staff wellness indicators. Do people see how that could be within the continuous quality improvement plan? So, you know, there's some of those examples of things that people missed in the draft standards that you review. People see how those could be incorporated into this model.
Like the social justice aspect, because that's over everything. Mm-hmm. Needs to be part of the CQI to see that all those pieces are addressed. Just what Maria said, even on how we present information for some of the providers is really a social justice issue. Mm-hmm. So it seems to me that that's an overarching. I don't know how we do it, but.
So, I think going back to something that Kristen had said when we were talking about this document originally, in terms of staffing that reflects the language of population of children and families, is that something that could be incorporated into the CQI process more explicitly? Not as a requirement where I have to submit my demographics like I have to the state, and match all of that kind of stuff, as much as that approaching it like we talked about, where you reflect about it and you look at resources and, you know, which can also just be your application that the family fills out and all of those things. It could be incorporated there, not as a absolute must, but something for them to continuously think about.
Right. No, I think all that can be extra. Yeah. And I guess I feel like we're kind of, people have said their components. What I guess a question that I have is was this helpful to kind of understand kind of the concept and provide that input to then look at reviewing the next set of standards, because then you can see how they connect. Did we accomplish that, sort of?
Because I want to see the next set of standards.
It feels to me like it gives us a grounding of how we might want to pull that forward to say, well, in our CQI, that's how it should make sure that's there. That's right, yeah. Right. Any other comments? Or ready to go to standards now, or do you want to?
Okay, I'm trying to talk, but I don't think anybody can hear. Go ahead, try again, Betty.
You must be on mute.
Yeah, sorry, we're not hearing you.
Maybe we need to take back to her when that.
Are you on mute?
Carry on. Feel free to type in, and so we can make sure, or you could send an email that we can make sure gets incorporated as well.
I don't think she heard.
Yeah. We're thinking maybe we did this. Should we have a little break? I was thinking as we were sitting here, I thought, I think it's almost 11. Should we take about a 5-minute break? There's water in the kitchen if you want, and then there is restrooms around the corner. So we're going to have for you on the phone, time for you to go get another cup of coffee, and then we'll start in 5 minutes.
Can I just real quick read what Betty wrote? I just think that the opportunity to accomplish the goal really lies in the creativity we show with the resources we select to support.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Yep.
Great, nice summary.
That's a good comment to go to put in to the CQI about our closing.
Yeah, great
I mean,
wording.
pull that up and use it.
Yeah.
I think, thank you, Betty.
I'm gonna go ahead and put the phone on mute just to kind of help you with background chatter.
when they do.
Thank you. So let's get started. We have just about an hour. We want to be sure we get everybody out into the sunshine. And so I may be the only one that was confused, but on these recommendations and then the additional areas, I was personally having a little difficulty knowing what to do with them because I couldn't find out where to attach them. But it's my understanding we don't have to attach them, but the TRI will attach them for us. We just have to identify what it is we want to see happen, which makes it much easier. And then they'll bring it back to us, that's right. And then we'll see if they got it right, since we don't know, I don't know for sure where I'm attaching them myself. So really we're the think tank to get the concepts right. So I think what we are needing to go back to now is to look at these to see what are these concepts that we want to send to TRI for them to attach the standards and then come back to us. That makes sense? Okay, good.
Good, because that's what I thought I just explained to Kristen. Good, I was right.
Well, I was feeling the responsibility to say what we're going to do with that, but I don't have to do that. So we just have to attach them. So since you already know all that.
No. That was just my understanding from the previous meeting.
Yes, you're more intact. So I think we just need to start with these and say, okay, what are these concepts we want to move on to TRI to work on? So, okay. And then, and then we still have one more component on the feedback on the educator qualification. So if we spend the next, 40 minutes or so on these if we need to, and then we'll go into the education one. So we'll save some time to be sure that we've got over the educator qualifications proposal. Is that okay? Because I want to be sure we get both of them. Plus, I really like this. I want to hear the discussion on that.
But yeah, I think with those, we can maybe not dive too deep on the recommendations at this point in time, because we have this going forward, and then make more time on the next agenda.
I just want to be sure we get the essence of what people want. So, what do we want to send forward from A?
Well, I wonder if it could be, I wonder if some of these are the policy questions we answered, like assure the system focuses on continuous quality improvement and is viewed less from a rating perspective.
And it focuses more on growing and improving.
Yeah.
That's what, those are the things I underline, but
yeah.
Yeah, this is Pam. I guess I thought your presentation of the CQI kind of addressed this piece. It's just the nuts and bolts, the feedback that came later about what I call the boots on the ground part, the forms and the accessibility.
So on the last part, it's just, because I also underlined this, some of the categories, especially 4, seem vague and needed further build out. Do we know what needs to be built out, or do we just want to say build it out? That's all
Does that relate to the connecting, on number A, connecting the category of standards? So in other words, on A, we were talking about in this document that you saw a progressive sequential kind of thread, and that they needed to be connected. And I guess that's what I thought it meant, seemed vague, and that we needed to flush out or build out, whatever.
I think that's what we
Is that what we meant?
I don't know. That's what I'm asking. I'm also thinking about the tier, the class in the 4-star. Did we build that out? Some of those kind of things that are, I don't want them to be dropping in holes. So we've got little concepts out there. Where do we connect them? But I think, yes, we did talk about that continuum.
I don't really know what the question is, but but I have a question along the time. And I think maybe it'll help me answer what I think about your question. So you called it a matrix last time. I call it a rubric. that's what we use in high school language. But, so you've got your standard, and are you asking, do we need to fill in the language for each of the three levels for each of the standards? Is that what you're asking? Or are you asking,
No, go ahead.
I didn't understand.
I think what I'm asking is, what do we want to have go forth to the TRI to build out so that when you look at the new standard, that it's articulated as we've identified it to be articulated.
So somebody else will fill in the rubric.
Right.
That's my question.
TRI.
TRI.
I look at Tom when I.
And TRI is
Tom's research. So if we send it to Tom, essentially it is Meredith and myself working closely with Tom's team to take the input and feedback and make sure that it's, try to get it reflected.
Your lead.
I know.
I'm like, okay.
But it's kind of like we've got the best of both worlds. We don't have to do the legwork.
Yeah.
We just have to give them the concepts, and then they take those concepts and write them up, and then we say, yes, that's what we meant, or no, that's not what we meant. And that we wanted it to be a progressive, I think what Pam was saying, and we did last time say we want it to be a progressive aspect, so that if you're at a 3 and then you want to go to a 4, that there is some difference. And it's not just check the box and now I'm 4 and then check the box. And that we want to be sure that it addresses the various ages as well. So
I think what I was remembering about A is that they had the different standards. There were 5 in each, I believe, labeled differently. And so because they weren't consistent across all levels, it was hard to see how one was a higher level of quality and would require more work as that ongoing improvement piece. So I think what we were asking was for, 5 consistent standards across all 3 levels.
He said very succinctly.
Yeah, and I think that in that way, the way that the online portal would work, I mean, if they gave, show us evidence on how you're doing 3 of these 6 things, and they could be, whatever under those tiers, but it would give them flexibility in how to provide evidence, but also give them some guidance on, things that would be in a higher quality program.
That was Cheryl speaking.
Oh, sorry.
No problem.
I think the one thing that comes to my mind is environment. Didn't environment drop off? And we said environment should stay. Yeah. That's just one of the examples. Because there are various kinds of environment. So, yeah. So whomever's taking those notes, sure.
Well, the group that I was in, we talked specifically about ways that you can label the standards so that, like the environment one could also address, places for staff to work outside of the classroom and a break room. Those type of things could be built in at the higher level under environment. And then some of these other things that we had asked them to think about.
Even family engagement.
Yeah.
Could be at a higher level in the environment. How you engage.
Yeah, because I think if a standard was called, personal relationships or something like that, or interactions, then you could highlight different pieces of both the adult-child, the teacher-parent, whatever the different groups are, and parent engagement, and then you just kind of set the examples and the evidence up under that. So I think more general standards, but then defining them more deeply as you go up.
So that it is a quality improvement.
Yes.
As it goes, so show that progressiveness.
This is Pam. So because we only have a limited amount of time, and Tom and his team can spend a lot more time on it, I'm just wondering whether or not it wouldn't help to have, instead of a rubric, I call it a matrix.
all those letters, yeah.
I know.
But maybe it might be helpful, because when I hear Cheryl talk, I just think of how many ways things cross over in terms of things. And if you have it in a matrix then you can see the linkage. And you don't have to have it completely flushed out, but just seeing that, yes, yep, they're connecting. Okay, yeah, they're connecting, I think might be helpful for us.
Well, and it could, now that you're saying that, I'm visualizing.
Okay.
I'm a visual person.
Mm-hmm.
But I think if we set the standard more global, and then, all of the pieces that would be considered part of the quality program underneath that,
Mm-hmm.
and then maybe the 3-star level is you're doing, 3 of those things, and at the 4-star level, you're doing 5 of those things, and at the 5-star, so pulling in more and more pieces of what a high-quality program would be doing in that area. I guess anyway, if you did.
So you were broadening the things that they would be able to do. So in other words, because there's one way to look at it, it says that if I can identify red, that's good, but if I know how to create red,
That's better.
That's developmental growth. Is that what? But the thing is that sometimes the creating red, it might not be the most important thing. It might be something else. That's what it might be, can you take a skillful color palette and do that?
Aren't we all kind of saying the same thing and just keep talking about it?
Well, I think that's what we're doing, is we're trying to get on the same page, and we're all using different,
Okay, I thought we were there, sorry.
So at our next meeting, as you'll see, it says under D, where it talks about this at the committee meeting in June. This is Shauna, my apologies. That at the committee meeting in June, that we will be looking at how they're choosing to build that out and look at it, and so there'll be more room for those conversations next month. So I want to make sure we still have room to get to the rest of our agenda today, because I know that we are excited to talk more about the educator qualifications piece.
So they're going to take this feedback.
Yes.
And do a full revision that we'll look at next month.
And in fact, it's on our work plan to look at that for June. So if we're all in agreement that we're going to take these concepts that we want, we're going to give it to TRI, and they're going to do their magic with Dawn, and then we'll bring it back to us and then explain it next time in June.
Do like Dawn's magic.
Yes.
And our plan is that it will then actually connect to the rating and monitoring, like where we did Cqi this time. It will connect the next draft of the standards around the rating and monitoring concept, so you kind of get it within that context.
And recognizing that we're doing rating as it relates to quality, not just as a number. Keep
that component of the system.
And then we need to be sure that we've got the different age groups reflected as well. So that's something that I don't think we've had before, so that's kind of that's a blank slate, so that's easier sometimes. Okay, so we okay with that? We'll be sure that we download all of this to the TRI people. They will bring it back, and we'll see how it's reflected in those standards. Okay? I love that kind of work, This is what we need done, so they'll go do it, bring it back, and then we'll okay it.
You're doing a really good job at just sitting back there.
Don't you wish our
I really actually think next time I should bring bonbons. Around bonbons, and you have to have, vegetables or something.
This would be, that's good. Is everybody okay with that? Are those on the phone okay with that? So in essence, we're going to take those things that you identified, they're going to get put into the format of the standard, and then we'll be able to react to them next time. Okay, that's great.
Sounds good.
Good. Anything in the chat? By the time the meeting's over, I'll remember. Okay, then the next thing, I think the last thing on our agenda besides planning for the next meeting is the review and feedback on the Educator Qualification Standard. That's in your packet.
There's a handout in your packet.
And then do you have some information for us?
Yeah, she's excited, she gets to play.
She gets to play with the board. So
Yeah,
Dawn's gonna walk us through some things.
And kind of just as I did with the continuous quality improvement plan, this PowerPoint just is to kind of help walk through that handout. And I may have to rely on my colleague over there, Tom Udell, to help me if I get a little stuck in some areas on this, because he's much more, he's dealt intimately with it, and I get to kind of wave the hand, oh yeah, do that. So,
and I might point out, Dawn, that this is a really this is an important aspect because this really relates to professional development. It relates to something that people have had issues or concerns about. So it's a big thing. It also relates very strongly to equity. And so there are a lot of things that we're trying to address in this. And so I think it's exciting that we're doing that.
So what I'm just going to real briefly go over kind of the data, but we've been through the data. You have lived the data, right? Lived the experience. I don't think we have to spend a lot of time on that because I really want to get to kind of the approach and walk through that specifically to get, then we have 2 policy questions again at the end to kind of talk through those components. And so to get started, so again, the data from the field test, the community engagement, the validation study, the process evaluation, which, we've looked at in depth at our second meeting, I believe, was all really part of this revision. And I think, so those are the PQ1, PQ4, how those all go together, and what those connections are. The education qualification revisions is that's really recognize and honor continuous quality improvement via 2 pathways in the rating, growth and achievement was part of the revision guidance. Make sure I'm not missing any notes I'm supposed to be saying here. Recognizing the points of tension that have existed. And I think I just want to kind of give a little shout out to I think the work that the TRI team has been doing with the implementation team, kind of that cross-sector group, is that recognizing there are points of tension as we're trying to bring together different systems. And I think that's a real strong recognition that we're going to have those tensions. And then how do we work through them the best that we can? And so, it's achievement versus growth. Reliance on licensing titles has been a point of tension. Experience, recognizing it or not recognizing it, that's a tension. Questions about Spark revisions. There's a lot of conversations that go on, and there's perceptions, ideas, and so those are points of tension. And really creating an understandable system. That's hard in a complex system of something that just isn't a thing that connects to others. I am in charge over here. I was trying to just just kidding. So, take my board away. So really, when we walk through this example, it really is going to be kind of an overall standard across all 3 of the stars of the tier levels. And so before we talk about the variations in the requirements, we kind of want to walk through how this approach is looking to work. And I want to, kind of also give a caveat kind of before. I think the points that are assigned, that, this is all a draft. Again, this is the concept of, and once the input is this, do we move forward to further define and get more specific into how that would be looked at. So this is the concept. The first one is, what is an educator? And I was kind of chuckling when Donalda mentioned about who are we talking about as an educator, because I knew this was a slide that we would be looking at today. And so how it's defined in terms of, so versus the reliance on the licensing terms is that it's looking at who is the educator, and that is who, an individual responsible for the planning, implementing, and or evaluating the program curriculum. So that would be examples of a provider, a program director, site supervisor, multi-site coordinators, teachers, ed teachers. It's the people whose professional development, achievement, and growth would be, this would be the definition of who we would be looking at in terms of for what the rating is. And go ahead.
This is Pam, just a question. So meaning that we're not looking at the qualifications of an assistant or aide or whatever we call it?
Yes.
Within our programs?
Yes. So it's taking it from not the form, but to the function that the person plays.
Right, okay.
And we'll talk about this in a policy discussion, but that's the approach that is being brought to you to know, should we further define, because there's a whole bunch of work that has to go on around this, but does this approach make sense? Like, so then who is that? Who do we count? Right? Education, training, and experience, what counts? So experience counts in this model. The professional development planning individually and with support, continued professional development, and educational achievement. So if you know, I know you guys all know the current Spark standards. This is really kind of taking all of those 5 standards and incorporating them into a way of looking at it. And so this is kind of a way to also think about those components in terms of, you know, kind of how it was, of kind of where some of the tipping point, and that, again, this is going to be an averaging of scores for the staff. So it's not like one staff is dependent, it's an averaging. So it's how, it's looking at the overall program and not so much at the individuals. So we look at experience being about 10% of the scoring system, professional development plan being about 10%, continued professional development being at 20%, and then educational achievement at 60%. So that's a higher, but there's still the recognition of those other components taken into consideration within how this would be approached.
So any other comments?
I love this shift in who and what is subject to the standards.
From Betty.
From Betty. So does that kind of, the concept and the approach, does that kind of resonate? Because I'm getting ready to look at an example next.
Does this still include the aides at the highest level?
It would, no, it would be who the educators are.
Okay.
So again, think about this not at a 3, 4, or 5, is like kind of your points are more of what's going to get you at what level you're at. Is that, Tom?
There is a caveat of possibly including aides at 5 stars.
That's what I thought I remembered.
Okay.
I think the concept of someone's handout of doing that. And
Something to.
yeah, and so the examples don't account for that. Would be something to discuss.
This would have your director and your teachers all factoring into that average.
Yeah. Okay. Yep. And you know, for family child care, that's you know, but a certified family would have the whole set of that.
I'm thinking of like a center who just had a new director.
Yeah.
Who's got a lot of long-standing staff, but the director is
new, yeah. It's averaging the totality of who falls in under that educator title, roles, function. Okay, so let's.
I think I'll.
Well, looking at, if I'm understanding it right, for family child care, so the provider must meet that standard, and then anybody that is basically the head person, but For family childcare, I think sometimes it would be easier if we have like the standard next to it that's current, so we can, for family childcare, I think so you have to just say at step 3, or start 3, your provider has to be a certain level, and then your staff has to be a certain level, right? But it's not saying that one has to be higher. I mean, it's a 50% or.
Percentages. Yeah.
I think, but the way that this is, if I'm understanding it correct, it's saying the provider must meet the standard, and the provider, so if you have someone doing your curriculum or something different than your assistant, I don't know.
Can we walk through some examples and see if that maybe answers part of it? We have something in the chat box from Chelsea. If we look at the program as a whole, I think that all the staff should be considered when they are actively working with children and parents.
Okay.
All right.
Can you go back to the definition of educator one more time? Sure. I don't think you can go back.
I don't think I can either.
That is?
No, one more.
There we go.
So individual
Implementing. Okay.
So, maybe some of the feedback is what does implementing mean? Is that actively working with the children? I think that's where the more work, but I think that's the intent, so that it's not, let's say, the bus driver or the cook. You know what I'm saying? It's who,
an administrator that has really nothing to do with.
Yeah, like there's an executive director who.
Yeah, right. I just wanted to make sure that's not in it.
No, will that cover that in the alignment of like your rules, like Accenture is allowed a van driver, but family childcare is not?
I think
with aligning the rules, will that?
We're working on the same, so a lot of the stuff that came out of the Head Start system alignment, work group 2 is being incorporated in the rule revision with some of it here. And so I can't answer it off the cuff, but we could definitely follow up.
This is just related to the Spark. Yeah, Spark into the.
And how to look at
the educator.
Yeah.
I don't know if but I noticed the chat box moved.
Thank you.
So I don't know if that's it.
No, I was scrolling down, I should
have gone through there. Okay, I just saw them move.
Hey, this is Betty. I have a quick comment. Oh, good. You guys can hear me this time. Hey. I was just thinking about the definition of educator as it's laid out here, and what I really like about it, aside the fact that it's going to stop the problematic inclusion of people like bus drivers or cooks who, we all know how that went out in the field test. But the other thing about it is that it encourages professional development in staff members who are not included, like aides or assistants or whatever you call them, to seek that professional development to become an educator by this definition and become part of the team that is planning and implementing curriculum or program. And so that kind of, to me, speaks to that like continuous quality improvement by encouraging staff members to continue in their career.
Good point. Thank you. I think it is a great example of that connection to the standards and the continuous quality improvement plan of that role. So this is just an example of what kind of from that worksheet that you saw the standards, and I think you have in your packet, of what it would kind of look like filled out. So you would have the names, and you would kind of have the title or role that the person plays that would be counted in this system based on the definition of educator. There would be the steps that they have on the Oregon Registry. If they have a professional development plan, what their experience is, and their continuous professional development. So that would kind of all be laid out what that is for the staff that fall into those categories. And so it doesn't look at the 50% of this, 20, incrementally. This is really, again, looking holistically.
Can I just make sure that I'm following? Is it because we already have the registry steps that you don't have? Because I think of registry steps as like the achievement.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. But it doesn't have degrees. Is it because we're
fair to assume that if they are, because, you know, like the director has 11, so that means they have degrees. So you don't need to have a column for degrees. Is that the thinking there?
That's the thinking.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
That's what I don't.
We might not know what the master's is, we know they have a master's.
Yeah,
But what you know is that,
without a bachelor's, so I think that what you're saying is maybe that we will call them in there because.
So possibly look at both achievement in both the registry and a degree.
see, for me, you know, I come from a community college, you know, I think that is a turnoff to have the degree. Even though I move and live in a world of that.
Degrees.
And so that's why I just wanted to make sure I was understanding, because I do know that 11 means that they have to have a master's degree. And Sabrina, I don't necessarily need to worry what the master's in, because I believe that the state has done their due diligence, and by giving them a step 11, that they've met certain areas, and so therefore I don't feel like I need to know that their degree was in architecture. Right. Or not. And I just think that I like not having degrees there because it seems more accessible and friendly, but I also understand your point.
But, and also, I mean, I've been at the Capitol testifying against exactly what you're saying, because for preschool promise right now, you have to have a bachelor's and you're a head teacher, but the testimonies are, what you're saying is, you know, saying that you don't have to have a bachelor's to run the program, you know, like, you know, because the House Bill 2013 is saying that. So, but for the system right now, having a degree on there would help. But if that passes 100%, then it's okay. I know it is. But
And this is autumn speaking.
Okay, so,
I have a question about continued professional development. So it says set 2 and 3 PD hours. Is that within a specific year?
Right.
That was Susan asking me.
that was Susan.
Because I know as someone who has a step 10, I've got lots of college credits, but I wouldn't count those in this section of my scoring because they have to be within a certain recent time frame.
I'm gonna look at Tom and how they were thinking of counting that. I think, again, it's the concept, not so much the how figured out yet. Like, what we're looking for is the concept here. And then do we move forward to kind of get to those more specifics?
So the question was about what year we would look at? So
Well,
we're thinking
yeah, because I mean, someone who
year.
has a degree has lots of set 2 or has college credits under their belt. So how would they score them? Does it have to be recent?
That, the concept as we're throwing it out now would be in something that would define in the past year, either the licensing year, the year before you, some concept around the past year.
And I think it's
in keeping with the field test,
okay. And I think it's in keeping of continuous quality improvement. You have an achievement, but your continued professional development is that continuous quality improvement.
Not stagnant.
You're not really done. So this is then kind of what you saw on the other sheet, how that would kind of, and again, these points are not set in stone. This is concept, kind of to that 10, 10, 20, did I do my math right, 60 point of view, is you can see then you would have this, a total from the Oregon Registry, professional development plan, experience, continuous professional development, and come up with an educator total. And I think what you can't see here is then that total is divided by the number of educators to give you a score of 33.7.
Yeah, so Chelsea has offered us a good amount of a few different pieces. That's why I'll try to summarize it. And Chelsea, if I don't summarize well, then you can add feedback to this as well. So she's again talking about the desire to look at the program as a whole, and her comments are looking at the importance of being mindful when they're hiring a science teacher to the classroom, that there's intentional teaching and for the primary role of that. And she does note that it states we are not focusing on titles, but still identifies titles, aids, assistants. And so she you went into that. Did you have a specific, is that just raising awareness, Chelsea, or did you have a specific question, comment related to this proposal and the design that Dawn's sharing right now that connects to that?
Well, with the proposal, I think because like when you were looking under 3 or 4 or 5 star, it still identifies saying aides or assistants. And because there's going to be a variety of programs and everyone has a different name for teachers in their program in their classrooms, that an educator really equals, if you're in the classroom, you're an educator, no matter. And I think programs need to realize that when they're in the hiring process, that they're considering that I like how you kind of have an average of all the staff, but I think everybody that's in the classroom needs to be included within this average because they're impacting children. If a program has what they call a head teacher, lead teacher, and yes, they may be designing the lesson plans, but the other teacher in the classroom is carrying out those activities. They're working with the kids, and I guess maybe I'm confused. Are all teachers included?
Currently, they're not, but I think I definitely get that point, and actually that's one of our ending policy questions to talk about that educator. So I think these questions would be really good as we go forward, just kind of fill out that policy considerations of how we go back and revise this.
Because being new to Oregon, and I wanted to be a part of the registry, and I think just knowing what I've gone through to kind of figure out my steps and where I was placed, I was really surprised. So I can't imagine teachers, especially if they're not familiar with the system, they don't really understand it, how much support will they get? What will encourage them to keep moving forward, to not get discouraged, to continue to pursue professional development, not just because it's based on a number, but it's based on the career that they're in and that they have a passion for continuous learning and being a part of an early learning system. And so that it's not, that we don't get so stuck on numbers, but it's really about their passion and what they want to learn about and what their kids need. Maybe if that we recognize in the classroom each year, they may need to kind of change up their teaching based on the kids they're serving, and so they're going to be looking for something very specific in training to help them.
This is Shauna. I think a lot of that helps to inform their thinking. I think that to get through this with the time that we're looking at, we probably need to figure out the bigger pictures of the what's and the hows. These are useful tidbits, but I think they mire us down ever so slightly. And so I think that we definitely want to get bigger picture from Chelsea about the importance of everyone in the classroom, about looking at your future for development. It's not just about numbers, it's about your ability to connect to the classroom and do those pieces, and keep that in mind as we're looking at how it evaluates as a whole. Betty also had a question wondering about how years of experience will be defined and calculated. And I think we're going to talk about that a little further in the conversation.
We're going to talk about it a little, not too much further, actually, because really this is a concept. The actual, we're looking at 10%. And so if people feel that should be a higher percentage, I think that is the input, but how it's all the scoring, we're bringing forward a concept, but those details have to happen after we kind of say, all right, where do we need to address the concept, and then we can come back with how more of the details. Because that's really the direction that we're needing from this group, I think.
Yeah, that bigger structure.
The bigger structure, yep, to go back and bring you something based on that.
Right. The discussion input.
Yep, exactly. And so I just real quickly want to just kind of show them what this would look like for a registered family. So you would Zena would fill this out for herself, or whatever, and then, you know, divide, it would be just the one score. So it's just kind of to show what it looks like both at a center or multiple staff location and a single staff location.
Can I suggest just a wording thing? I'm confused when you use educator multiple times to mean multiple things. Educator to me is one person. So then when you say the educator qualification score, that's the score for the entire program. Is there another word you can use there? Spark participating program, or maybe, yeah, it gets confusing. Yeah.
Yeah. And there was, Betty did make the comment that she does think that experience could count for more, to make it closer to academic achievement. So she was looking at the equitable piece of that for increasing the experience piece for more. Back from Betty.
Beyond 10%.
Beyond 10%.
This is Mina. I was wondering, I know that you focus on the teachers, the head teachers, but if there's any way that assistant aid can be a component, but it could be additional points instead of getting in the mix of it, and then some feel like, oh, that's going to drag down the average score, but they
Calculate separately.
Calculate separately, and if they have a qualified assistant or aide that really come in contact with children, then that can be the bonus point or just additional to move them forward. That would be counted in and valued. That would be my suggestion.
Okay. Well, and if we're really encouraging ongoing improvement, even if they track their aides in a similar way, they could be able to show that their assistant's average started at a 8, and then the following year it was a 13. So they're showing that their overall their group of aides are increasing their training, but collectively they can show that improvement.
That was Cheryl.
So I think this conversation actually really lends itself to our first policy question, and because Tom and I did a little correction on a slide, I forgot to dump in my policy slide. And so Kristen is typing it in real quick for us, because I think it gets to just what you were talking about, is the definition of educator representative of the I was afraid of this part.
While she's typing that, Christina did make a comment about agreeing with Betty in regards to experience. So this is Shauna talking, that experience could count for more. And Christina noted that step 1 in ORO is not very difficult to achieve, that 10 years of experience is worth more than a step 1 in ORO. She was offering some context for us to look at the experience piece and valuing it for more. So that adds on to that as well.
And also, did Tom ask something?
Can I clarify something?
I did.
I just wanted to make it clear, because I think it maybe gets to your point, is that we wouldn't automatically include people that by licensing or aid 1s or aid 2s or assistant 1s or 2s, or even in the program identified, but you could choose to. So if you have a highly qualified person who is labeled an assistant teacher in your classroom, put them in as an educator. It's your choice to do that. You programs will identify who their educators are.
Okay. So I have
in the current proposal. That's the way we were conceptualizing it. I think that piece got lost a little bit in the presentation.
So we probably should note that somewhere. Go ahead, Autumn, did you?
So when I said that, I'd like to see the standards. I did look back in our little packet, what's the current standard for the qualifications in there. So now looking at it, my biggest concern for family child care is that the current system that we have is the program leader normally, I'm talking about like certified family. The program leader is normally the owner that has to be a certain level, and then the aides, everybody underneath them, like 50% had to be whatever level. And then everybody had to have the training. Most family child care, everybody in the program is usually the same, like their job descriptions. There's a cook, there's a cleaner, there's a teacher, there's everything. You certify or you train your staff to be universal. Because at any one time, you never know what that person needs to do. So the way that the new system, if I'm understanding it right, is that you want the owner basically to have to be the educator, and then you would pick one of your people to be an educator. So if they're replacing the educator, because it's saying if the provider identifies other educators, those people would be, and the assistants are generally not included.
I think the concept would be who is serving in the function of educating the children, of doing the curriculum, the implementing the curriculum, of interacting with the children. Those would be who you would put on your list for scoring.
But
so that would be everybody.
So how will that? So all of my teachers at that point I'm just looking at the 4-star, would have to be a step 8. So now you're hindering me more.
How are you seeing it that way?
Because if all my, so my whole program is different now that I'm a preschool promise, but we're getting funded for that. So a normal family child care, certified family, is you would have the owner and you'd have sometimes 2 to 3, well, say two other teachers in your classroom, 2 other people, 2 other staff in your classroom, right? Mm-hmm. So those staff are trained universal to do whatever you need in that program. So like you may have an infant, you may have a school age, you may have a preschool. Mm-hmm. They have to be trained for all of those positions, okay? Mm-hmm. So if they're implementing curriculum, so I'm telling her, okay, run this craft while I go do paperwork, whatever, that is educating those kids. So now I have to bump her up to an educator. So all of my teachers fill in, so they all have to be educators. So now I have to have everybody at a step 8.
So there's no step requirement.
There is, because if you're an educator, you have to be a step 8 or the mixture of registry step and experience.
But this is Pam. I think this gets back to Mina's concept, because I think it works for Head Start, which is very regulated, and family child care, in the sense that if you have a system where you rate the educator, the owner, for us, the teacher, and then you have a separate system that you rate, whether you call your people aides, providers, whatever, and I call them assistants, and then you do that as an add-on, then you can, because if you say that I can list anybody as an educator, that throws my whole system off. And I'm going to just tell you, in a union environment, I can't afford to list an assistant teacher as an educator, because the union they just won't accept that process. But if you can classify them, you get the bulk of your points for the higher level person, because my point is that you have trained all of those people. You are overseeing their implementation. They are implementing curriculum, but you're giving them feedback and direction about that implementation. So that set of points, and then there's a set of points for the other staff that are getting more direct feedback from the owner or the site manager in the Head Start program. You see what I'm saying?
But in my program, before preschool, in my program, all of my teachers were pretty much paid the same, depending on their experience. If they were with me longer, of course, they're going to be paid higher. But their whole role, they had to do everything. So
are you overseeing what they're doing?
I am, in the current system.
Let me just correct, I may have misspoke, because actually when I go back to the educators, I don't know it's everyone, I think I confused wanting everyone to be included. Right now, the proposal was the providers, the program directors, site supervisors, multi-site coordinators, teachers, head teachers. So it's individuals responsible for the planning, implementing, and or evaluating the program curriculum. So I think the question is who does that mean, and should there be, for other people that are working with children, should that be looked at in a different way? Because then I think, Autumn, that would address because you're the one planning, implementing, and you're having your other.
And evaluate.
But in the second thing, you're saying if the provider identifies other educators who implement program curriculum, those individuals must also meet the criteria. That is, every single teacher in my program has to meet.
So that's
Hey,
input.
this is very important.
That is still input. Sabrina's really good input.
We're talking about an average for your program.
Yeah.
So if it's not an average, it's telling you, but it's telling you criteria that they have to meet.
But Sabrina
The
wants
criteria,
to
which
comment.
criteria is an organ registry step 8.
So this is
Hi,
Sabrina.
can I just real quick?
Just a moment, let's Sabrina and then you, okay?
So, this is Sabrina, and I have one kind of question to kind of develop on two different systems here as when we're defining educators, and I think about our program. For our program, all teachers in our class have to be listed as teachers with the Office of Child Care for Licensing. However, our teachers, we have a teacher and we have teacher assistants per job description in our program. So when you look at who and where are we identifying them as teachers? Are we talking about what the Office of Child Care identifies as teachers? Because we have,
what this proposal is looking at what your program identifies, not the Office of
well,
Child Care.
we have to do it two ways. We have to tell, over here, we're saying we have 3 teachers because we operate 7 a.m. to 5:30 p.m. Monday through Friday. But over here in job description, this is the classroom teacher, and these are her assistants. And we can't take away the 3 teachers, and I put this in quotations, with Office of Child Care, because then we're not in compliance.
So this really, this divorces from the licensing. This is a different system. So for licensing, because of those, and I could tell you in rule revision, they're working on, is there a way, because every program calls everybody something different. I mean, we're trying, but ultimately you gotta call something something. So this proposal actually divorces it from what you put on your licensing versus what you put on Spark. Because of that, we tried to merge multiple systems, and that was clearly a problem. So this is taking that known problem and trying to not continue it, that knowing that who's working with the kids, what they're doing, it's their duties and what they're doing, not what they need to be called for other reasons. So that's what this proposal does.
So, and I think there was a comment on the phone.
Hey, yeah, this is Betty. I just wanted to say that I think this conversation about who constitutes an educator in various scenarios is really important, and we should definitely figure that out. But I just want to call out that it's being harder for any program to achieve a higher ranking because of their staff, being expected to work directly with children to implement the curriculum. I don't think that that's the same thing as a lack of equity or access or a hindrance. I think it should be challenging to achieve a higher rating. And if you expect all of your staff members to work directly with children to implement quality curriculum, then there should be a challenge that those staff members should meet whatever quality rating standards we set forth in this committee. I think it's supposed to be challenging as long as we have our terms clearly defined, and I don't think it's the same thing as being a hindrance. I think it's a challenge that we should try to set all programs up to achieve.
This is on one of it. Chelsea said she agrees, and Marina notes that she appreciates the point system as well. She thinks it's reflective of what the research and validation study shows in terms of experience. She also appreciates the lens of more experience to increase equity. However, experience isn't highly related to better child outcomes. She also thinks we need more research on the topic. Good discussion. And she echoes, but get that in here.
And does this mean, a question is the experience in the United States, experience just in period in other countries?
I don't think I don't know that we've thought about it as different. It would be experience. So I don't think I don't think there was any intention of not counting if you came from another country and did that same work, that wouldn't count as experience. Kids are kids.
Because also in education, they recognize have to be the American.
Yeah, so I think the intention of the experience is really to recognize all experiences.
Children. I think we've got a lot of thoughts going on here, and I don't want to cut us off, but I do know that we're up close to 12.
Could I try to summarize maybe some next steps so that we could take this back of what I heard and see if I kind of captured it, and maybe this is what you, however you want to capture it, Kristen, or written, fine too, is need, kind of need to, let me give it. What I heard from the group is a recognition that anyone working with kids should be looked at. And so maybe there's like a two-tiered kind of, there's a group that's implementing the curriculum and the child development, and then maybe there's where you're looking at the people interacting with the children. That maybe that's a way to look at it from this point system approach. And then I also heard is also then to kind of map that up with the current standards as they are and make sure that there's how the point system lays out doesn't mean that how those rules lay out doesn't mean that everybody within a facility would need to be at the same level, that it needs that the architecture of it needs to create that balance of new people coming in and maybe don't have this much experience, and so being able to balance that, we need to make sure that we double check that in terms of how the standards are stated and how the scoring works. Does that feel like that captures the high level direction that we can provide?
That sounds good for everybody? Okay, at least.
I mean, there's a few, I'm just trying to distill it down to get us so we can bring something back.
The differentiation between licensing and Spark too needs to be.
I think this is Eva, I think that sounds perfect. I would just like to put an awareness on the table, not that there's necessarily anything that can be done with it, but when we look at a K-12 system that's working on licensing, they may have an educational assistant who is listed as an educational assistant in their program, is listed as a teacher licensing, and we're now going to be looking at them as an educator as well. So I just see that we just need to recognize that we may be asking for yet another label for them and an awareness of that. So it's tough work, and it's probably going to have to be that way anyways, but I just want to put that out there.
Do you think there's, I mean, just to follow up, because you know, it's just, you got to call something, right? Same concept. It's like, is it better to maybe just look at not saying it's something and just defining it? I don't know, because that's in essence, right?
So those might be some good questions for next time.
Well, okay, so I guess this paper I'm confused on. So we've got all of this, the draft. So this is not, this is not the current. I thought it was the current. It's not the current. This is a draft, right, Tom?
The very best.
Oh, the
yeah. That should be the current. I think
it's not, because I thought that too, but it's not, because like on a step 3 or star 3, you'd be a step 7. Now they're implementing step 7.5. I feel like
this is the current. We made a change in the field test for an alternative evidence that a provider could be a step 7. But these were the standards that were rolled out for the field test.
Yeah.
The back page is the standards that were
for the field test, which is old, not new.
Correct. The QRS field test.
Yeah.
We put them on there just so you could compare.
Field test is what we already did.
Old and new.
He's calling it current, but it's what we already did.
These are the personal qualifications, current, that's on the Oregon QRIS website. This is the document on the website.
So is there a typo, do you think?
a step 7.
It says 7 and
And then it's
documentation 7.5.
Oh,
And
yeah.
Sabrina's been bringing that up even from the last.
So this is not accurate.
And this is Sabrina, and I'm gonna say one of the reasons why I'm kind of a driver on this particular topic is that, again, we put our parents through CPA. Once they graduate CPA, we put them through CDA. We give them a year to obtain a CDA. When they obtain a CDA as a teacher assistant or a teacher in our program, a CDA is only equal to a step 7.
Versus in my program, it's a 7.5, but it's because I'm attached to a community college.
You have to have 8 credit hours in order to receive 8 college credit hours plus a CDA to receive a 7.5. We are not attached to a college. We are a community-based Head Start, and therefore, we go from CTA to CDA. CDA equals 7. Then some of our staff can go on to have an AA, and they go through Mount Hood. But once they obtain the AA, they go from a 7 to a 9.
So is this some stuff that we can share to our people? And you can massage all of these 3 different examples and come back with us?
A document that shows all 3
Or
would be great.
whatever, because it shows all 3.
Like, or 2, I guess, what it currently is, what you're proposing you want to change it to. I just feel, you know, Tom, I've had a huge input from the very beginning on this that I didn't like it. I'm saying now I don't like the new way. It's not going to, I can see it's not going to work. I think because I know that the wording maybe not what needs to be there.
Examples of programs and what their staffing looks like now compared to what it would look like.
I think that's again, this is the concept. I think that's a great, like, let's flush from this input and then plug in some programs to show what that would look like.
We'll really work the issue more next time. So next time our agenda, we'll have a lot more time for this, because this is where the
huge barrier for many people.
Yes, and when I ask you, I'm sorry. I was going to say this is a big issue, so we want to give it the time for this.
Yeah. But I still want a sense of, if you can, like, in terms of a concept of looking at your program as a whole and how the points are constructed, does that make sense?
So this is Sabrina, and on my end, looking at even adjusting the point system, and I'm trying to calculate this all. We have 33 Head Start classrooms and 24 early Head Start classrooms. Each one of our facilities gets a rating by the facility licensing number. So we may have an early Head Start where we have 2 classrooms and a licensing number that has 2 early Head Start and 2 Head Start. Now, our early Head Start folks may have bachelor's degrees or AA degrees, and our Head Start folks have CTA working on CDA. Now, our CDA or CTA parents, which is what they are, they come through as parents, they may have 0 experience in the field. They may have 0 set to trainings. They may have very minimal amounts of things because they are just now entering the field and going through the process of becoming certified through CTA, CDA, and onward. And when we look at the facility licensing number, we can have a great deal of things, say, on the early Head Start side that represents what's happening here, but on the Head Start side, it will pull where we can be rated down because we have folks that don't meet any of this criteria. And then when you pull in who is the coordinator for that site, or if we're going to use the director, we have 2 directors. We have an EHS director and we have an executive director. So we have like lots of pull down ways that it comes out, and it can impact us because of the way that we teach our parents to become our staff and we put them through this process.
Okay, and Sabrina, I'm confident, this is Pam, I'm confident in Dawn and Tom and the team that heard all of this, that I can see how it could be done. And if we could just give the chance to let them come back and present, and then make sure that we have a significant amount of time to look at it.
Yeah.
And what I'm really hearing is we have to see what is it current, what is it going to, and even if it's what is it going to, option 1 or option 2 or something like that, and have them stacked together.
A couple different scenarios, because we have center-based, and we have home-based, and then we have variations even in the
in the school I appreciate so much that Eva keeps.
Oh, yes.
Because I've been helping David Douglas try and go through it.
Trying not to be too focused there.
Well, and the multiple licensing and teaching, the multiple levels. I agree. So this seems like a big issue. We know it's going to be a big issue, and it also has a spillover because in the other committees, there's professional development is one of their issues also. So we'll devote some time to that. And if you have thoughts after you're driving home about something, give them to us. No, those really do help.
They do.
They do help because it's people have questioned some of the things, and then we look at it and say, oh, yes, that's good, let's add that to the mix. So, I knew this was gonna be, I like this because it does get us thinking and it does have some options and it's
one of the best ones we've had.
Oh, good.
Our blood is running.
We got to devalue our staff and not tell them they're not quality ratings.
No, or not be able to read that. Well, and we've also identified that, we have to see how this complements the oral system because this is really connected to that. So this is some really good base work that's going to help. And knowing that the QRIS and Spark system is not with the license system, that's enough, those are some good awarenesses that we can have as we go forward. So our next meeting is June 16th. Keep the blood boiling and the thoughts rolling, and then we'll add a significant amount of time to take the agenda for this. Any other comments about this? But please, if you...
Thank you guys for all your hard work on this. Thank you.
It's so nice of you knowing we can interpret, So thanks for just recognizing that we have to think about the thoughts, and then we can have the people fill out what, they can color in the dresses. We just have to get the foundation on there. We have to put the skeleton together.
I just have one question, Sabrina, that I was really curious and I was kind of trying to figure it out. But in the new rules that I know are being created, because they don't exist yet, is there a renewal process and procedure being implemented in these rules?
I'm pretty sure it's part of that
You would think it would be.
There's got to be.
Because I was very curious to wonder what that would look like as far as, I know we're all sitting around here and I'm like, hey, I know where all of my sites are rated right now. So
she'd worry about down rating.
Oh, because of the advocacy that's happened, but when that renewal process happens, will they be revising or reviewing everybody that's now in those locations opposed to who?
Oh, you're actually talking about transitioning from
the current people that have already been star rated, are they going to be downgraded?
Are they in the star?
Or upgraded?
Grandfather. Or, you know what I mean? Because we have staff changes, so that means that some of our sites where we got 5-star ratings, the staff is potentially.
I don't think that would be part of rule. That would be more just how we transition.
Yeah.
That's the question.
And thinking that one of our premises that we've turfed over to TRI is that it's quality improvement, it's not rating. Right. So even if, we're looking at our renewals, are we working continually on continuous improvement? That's going to be, so thinking about those things.
That's afraid.
So, thank you very much. Any last words? And, knowing that you can send us the other last words also. Otherwise, I think we're overdue, and we'll see you again on the 16th, 9 to 12. And since we have such good discussion, since we're face-to-face,